Hello, welcome to this webinar, Creating Worship that Connects Liturgy as a Tool of Mission in Reaching Out. I'm Chris Thorpe, a parish priest for the past 32 years, mostly in urban parishes, but for the last 12 years here in rural Shropshire. I'm also a writer with Canterbury Press and have written liturgies for the whole Christian year, and we're just about to publish Ploughshares and First Fruit, 24 festivals for rural churches. I also write for the RSCM in their Sunday by Sunday. In this section of the webinar, I'll be sharing some of the underlying thinking about how to craft liturgy that connects with our wider communities. During the COVID pandemic, it's believed that 1 in 4 of our population viewed an online service. People in a time of great uncertainty wanted to connect with something deeper, something bigger. In the business community, people are saying that the pandemic propelled us forward 3 years in 3 months. It has certainly pushed us into a period of rapid evolution as we've sought to respond to this new demand for spiritual connection. But are we equipped to connect? I'm going to ask 3 questions. Are we reaching people? Are we talking about the things that matter to people? And are we using the right language? I think most of our worship has been created to suit the people who come to church already, that most of the time we're talking to ourselves. The challenge is to create worship that reaches out to connect with people who don't even think that God is for them. Worship, for me, is a key tool for mission. I think we need to be creating stepping stones that will help people to take a step towards God to see what worship is like. I do it through a calendar of festivals, 1 a month, that you can invite people to that will be a bit different. So let's look at those questions I posed. Firstly, are we reaching people? It feels sometimes that the church has been stranded on the high tide mark and that life has receded and we're stuck there struggling with declining numbers, elderly congregations, reducing clergy numbers and money worries too. So how do we connect with our communities again? What's the big issue in your community? Is it new housing? Is it unemployment? Whatever it is, what does our faith tell us about it? We need to begin by listening. Where's God already at work? Where can you see signs of life, passion, the energy for change? See, I think our job is to reconnect with all sorts of people who may not even realize that God has something to say about what they are passionately committed to. I often use the simple songs of praise structure. People love hearing favourite hymns. They love the interviews that are so personal. They like to hear scriptures that bring light to an issue that matters to them. So in crafting one of those services, I always begin by inviting a group of people to help with the service. It might be a group of local musicians or local artists, the library, a local history group. It might be a particular industry or business. We launched a Shop Local campaign recently, a drama group, or it might be triggered by a particular cause or event. We lost somebody, a younger person, to pancreatic cancer, and the family helped us to craft a service that spoke about that. It might be dementia or domestic violence. Whatever the issue is that touches people, what has God got to say about this? It's not about sitting, waiting for people to come to church. It's about reaching out and building bridges. Did you know that the Latin term for priest is pontifex, which means bridge builder? And as the priesthood of all believers, we are all called to be bridge builders. So are we talking about the things that matter to people? COVID-19 has been a great lesson in being nimble. Suddenly all our churches were shut, we were fumbling to get online, but we were all dealing with the same narrative. We were all part of the same story. We were beginning to broadcast from home. Services had to be less formal, less institutional. We needed to find language that would reassure in the face of fear, to help people with the changes and chances of this fleeting world to rest upon God's eternal changelessness. We needed to be able to deal with issues of isolation, of separation, and of loneliness, listening to the mood, the themes, the questions, and then crafting worship to respond. And pre-COVID, it was just as important to find out where people are connecting already. It's less about the 16th Sunday after Trinity. It's not about imposing our structure, but listening for where people are engaged already. That's why in the RSCM Sunday by Sunday, I've been focusing on some of those more community issues like Father's Day, how to mark Father's Day being true to the complex pattern of family life today. What about Valentine's Day and about falling in love? So many people get engaged on Valentine's Day. What's God got to say about falling in love? And what about Creation Tide? In the midst of this climate emergency, what can we do? What's God calling us to do? How are we reflecting that in our worship? And the next question, are we using the right language? I don't know how you picture your church. Some churches feel like the ship of salvation, like a cruise liner ploughing undisturbed through the choppy seas. A separate world, our own calendar, our own language. Sometimes that can feel a little disengaged, a little elite. I prefer the image of a lifeboat down in the waves with the people, easy to get into, low sides. And one of our problems, one of the barriers to entry, is our religious language. People are no longer familiar with the terms we use. They no longer recognize the biblical background. They don't use the same language. Common worship, whilst being in contemporary language, is very heavily doctrinal. It tries to say everything every time. Often in the church we use very cerebral language. We live in our heads. It fails to connect with the heart. It's not embodied. It doesn't engage our emotions. Sometimes our language is too institutional. It seems concerned with correctness, control, and people just switch off. And sometimes there are just too many words, and people need to have more silence, more poetry. Sometimes our language is too top-down, too doctrinal, too unfamiliar. So we have to test our language with people who are not part of the church, and especially with young people. What I've been finding is that we need to do just the reverse. We need to start with grassroots language, start with human experience. Actually, that's what Jesus did, speaking the language of the heart. What are the toughest things in our lives? Loss, betrayal, loneliness, illness, fear, poverty. What happens if we start from there and then seek to find connections with our faith, allowing the Bible to speak, learning the language of the heart? That's why I so often use Psalms, because they are so raw, so honest. Why, God, have you abandoned me? What are the best experiences of our lives? Falling in love, seeing the birth of a child, celebrating friendship, valuing work and achievement. Can our language start there? These too are important experiences. And our language needs to reflect insights beyond our own. The language of science, the wonder of creation, the balance of nature, of evolution. So many people enjoy seeing Brian Cox or Alice Roberts informing us about the wonders of the universe. Can we allow the language of science to inform our language? So in conclusion, if we can listen first to discern what really matters to people, where they are passionate for change, if we can involve people in the crafting of worship, allow their voices, their gifts to be seen and heard, If we can use the language of the heart, the language of poetry, then we may begin to connect again with our community. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be in the plenary session later, so do ask some questions. Thank you.